Jack Miller sat at his old wooden desk, his fingers tapping against his laptop keyboard. The familiar sounds of his childhood home wrapped around him like a warm blanket. The slight creak of the house settling, the ticking of the old grandfather, clock downstairs, the distant hum of the refrigerator. He had missed these sounds during his first year at college. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Maple Creek, the kind of day where nothing exciting ever happened. Jack had come home for the weekend mainly to do laundry and eat something besides dining hall food. His mother, Nancy Miller, had greeted him yesterday with his favorite homemade lasagna and questions about classes, friends, and whether he was eating enough vegetables. Jack smiled as he worked on his history assignment. His mother always worried too much. At 19, he felt fully grown, but to Nancy, he would always be her little boy. Single mothers were like that, he supposed. It had been just the two of them since he was 4, when his father died in a car accident. At least that's what Nancy had always told him. The soft afternoon light filtered through his bedroom window, casting long shadows across the blue carpet. Jack stretched his arms above his head, thinking about taking a break. Maybe he would grab a snack or see what his mother was doing downstairs. She had been acting a little strange since he arrived home, checking the locks repeatedly, glancing out windows, jumping slightly when the phone rang. Jack had asked if everything was okay, but Nancy just smiled and said she was tired from working extra shifts at the hospital. She was a nurse in the pediatric ward, beloved by patients and staff alike for her gentle touch and calm demeanor. The sudden sound of tires on gravel caught Jack's attention. He glanced out the window to see a black SUV with tinted windows pulling up at the end of their long driveway. It stopped there, engine running. Strange. They rarely got visitors and no one ever just waited at the end of the drive. Jack was about to call down to his mother when his bedroom door flew open with such force that it banged against the wall. Nancy stood in the doorway, her face drained of color. Her normally neat brown hair was disheveled, and her eyes were wide with a fear Jack had never seen before. "Mom? What's wrong?" Jack stood up quickly, his chair scraping across the floor. "Jack, you need to run. Go to Uncle Pete's cabin now." Nancy's voice trembled as she rushed across the room. She grabbed his arm with one hand while pressing something small and cold into his palm with the other. Jack looked down. It was a key, old and brass with a small tag attached. He recognized it as the key to his Uncle Pete's hunting cabin, a place they visited occasionally when he was younger. Uncle Pete wasn't really his uncle, just an old friend of his mother's who had moved away years ago but still let them use the cabin. "Mom, you're scaring me. What's happening?" Jack tried to stay calm, but his heart was beginning to race. Nancy moved to the window and quickly pulled the curtain shut. "There's no time to explain," she said, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Take the back path through the woods. Don't use your car. Don't use your phone. Don't tell anyone where you're going." She moved to his closet and pulled out the emergency backpack they always kept ready, a family tradition he'd never fully understood until this moment. It contained basic supplies, a flashlight, first aid kit, water purification tablets, some energy bars, a change of clothes, and $200 in cash. "Mom, I'm not leaving you here alone. If something's wrong, we can call the police," Jack said, his voice rising with concern as he took the backpack from her. Nancy's eyes softened for just a moment as she placed her hands on his cheeks. "Listen to me carefully, Jack. I've prepared for this day for years. There are people coming who want information I have. I need to handle this, but you need to be safe." "What people? What information?" "Mom, none of this makes sense." Jack could hear the panic creeping into his own voice now. The sound of car doors slamming came from the front of the house. Nancy's head snapped toward his bedroom door, her body tensing. "Promise me you'll go to the cabin and stay there until I contact you," she insisted, her fingers digging into his shoulders. 3 days. If you don't hear from me in 3 days, there's a letter in the cabin, under the floorboard beneath the east window." "Mom, promise me, Jack." Her voice was steel now, a tone he'd never heard her use before. "I promise," he said, the words barely making it past the lump in his throat. Nancy nodded once, satisfied. Then she did something unexpected. She reached up and unclasped the silver locket she always wore. the one with the picture of Jack as a baby inside. She placed it around his neck. "Keep this with you," she whispered. "Now go. Out the window. Stay in the trees. Remember all those hikes we took? All those trails I showed you? This is why." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the house below. Someone was inside. "Go," Nancy said one last time, pushing him toward the window. She pressed a quick kiss to his forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world." Before Jack could respond, Nancy was moving toward his bedroom door. She slipped out, pulling it closed behind her. Through the door, he heard her voice, suddenly calm and controlled, saying, "Gentlemen, I've been expecting you. Let's talk in the living room." Jack stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing to make sense of what was happening. Then his training kicked in, because that's what it had been all along, he realized. Training, all those camping trips, the just-in-case conversations, the emergency backpack, the memorized routes through the woods. His mother had been preparing him for this day. With shaking hands, Jack opened his window, careful not to make a sound. He climbed out onto the sloped roof of the back porch, the same way he used to sneak out as a teenager. The air was cool against his face as he carefully made his way to the edge and dropped down to the soft ground below, landing in a crouch just as his mother had taught him. Jack didn't look back at the house. He couldn't. If he did, he might not be able to leave her there. Instead, he adjusted the backpack on his shoulders, clutched the key in his hand, and ran toward the tree line at the back of their property. The dense woods swallowed him quickly, the familiar path barely visible among the undergrowth. As Jack moved deeper into the forest, the sounds of civilization faded behind him. His mind raced with questions, but one thought kept pushing through. His entire life with his mother had been built on secrets he never knew existed. And now those secrets had come knocking on their door. 15 miles of wilderness lay between him and Uncle Pete's cabin. Jack moved quickly but carefully through the gathering darkness, just as Nancy had taught him. He had no idea what waited for him at the end of this journey, or what would happen to his mother. But he had made a promise. And Jack Miller always kept his promises. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the trees as Jack disappeared into the depths of the forest, leaving behind the only home he had ever known, and the mother whose secrets were now endangering them both. The cabin stood silent in the clearing, just as Jack remembered it, small, weathered, and perfect for hiding. He had arrived late Saturday night, guided only by moonlight and memories of childhood trips. Now, as Monday afternoon sunlight filtered through dusty windows, Jack paced the wooden floors, worry eating away at him. 3 days, his mother had said. 3 days before he should worry. It had been only 2, but each hour stretched longer than the last. Uncle Pete's cabin was exactly as they had left it years ago. A small kitchen with a propane stove, a main room with a fireplace, couch, and small dining table, a bedroom with 2 cots, simple, basic, safe. Jack opened the cabinet under the sink and pulled out the old radio his mother always insisted they keep here. He turned the dial, searching for news, any news that might explain what was happening. Static filled the cabin, broken occasionally by music or weather reports. Nothing about his mother. Nothing about strange happenings in Maple Creek. His stomach growled. Jack had been rationing the energy bars from his backpack, supplementing them with canned beans and corn he found in the cabin's pantry. He wasn't hungry enough to try fishing in the nearby stream yet, though his mother had taught him how. His mother. Nancy. Jack clutched the silver locket around his neck, the one she had given him before he fled. Inside was a picture of him as a baby cradled in her arms. Her smile in that photo was different somehow, younger, more carefree. Before whatever trouble had found them. "Who are you really, Mom?" Jack whispered to the empty cabin. The silence offered no answers. Jack moved to the window, scanning the woods for any sign of movement. Nothing but trees and shadows. He had followed her instructions perfectly. No phone, no car, no contact, just waiting. His thoughts wandered to the black SUV in their driveway, the men who had entered their house, the fear in his mother's eyes. None of it made sense. Nancy Miller was a pediatric nurse who volunteered at animal shelters on weekends. She baked cookies for the neighbors at Christmas. She cried during sad movies. She wasn't someone with dangerous secrets, yet she had been prepared. The emergency backpack, the escape route, the cabin key she kept hidden but accessible, the instructions about the letter under the floorboard. The letter. Jack's eyes moved to the east window of the cabin. His mother had said to check under the floorboard there if 3 days passed without contact. It had only been 2 days, but patience had never been Jack's strong point. He crossed the room and knelt beside the east window. The wooden floorboards were worn, but one looked slightly different than the others. Jack pressed his fingers along its edge, feeling for a gap. The board lifted easily, as if it had been removed many times before. Inside the small space was a metal box about the size of a thick book. Jack pulled it out, surprised by its weight. It was locked, with no keyhole he could see. Just a small panel with numbers on the front. A code. He needed a code to open it. Jack sat back on his heels, thinking, what numbers would his mother use? Her birthday? His birthday? The day his father supposedly died? He tried them all. The box remained locked. Then Jack remembered something. On his 16th birthday, his mother had made him memorize a sequence of numbers. She had called it a family tradition, saying someday he might need them. At the time, he had thought it was just one of her quirks. His fingers trembled slightly as he pressed the numbers on the panel. 847219. The box clicked, and the lid popped open. Inside was a sealed envelope with his name written on it in his mother's neat handwriting. Beneath the envelope were documents, a passport he had never seen before with his mother's picture but a different name, a stack of cash in different currencies, and a small flip phone that looked at least 10 years. Old Jack's heart pounded as he opened the envelope. Several pages of his mother's handwriting greeted him. "My dearest Jack," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I've been found. I hoped this day would never come, but I've prepared for it anyway. There are things I've kept from you. To protect you, to give you a normal life. But now you need to know the truth." Jack read on, his world shifting with each line. Nancy Miller wasn't his mother's real name. She had once been Elaine Weber, an accountant at a large corporation called Meridian Enterprises. 15 years ago, she had discovered financial records proving the company was a front for money laundering and worse. When she took her findings to her boss, she learned he was involved. She went to the FBI instead. Her testimony had helped convict several high-ranking executives, but others had escaped justice. Those men had vowed to find her. The government had placed her in witness protection, given her a new identity, and moved her to Maple Creek. Jack had been just 4 years old, too young to remember their previous life or to accidentally reveal their secret. Everything I've taught you, the camping skills, the emergency plans, the memorized routes and phone numbers, it was all to prepare you for this possibility. The letter continued. "I'm so sorry for keeping this from you. I wanted to tell you when you turned 18, but I was afraid. Afraid it would change how you saw me, afraid it would burden you with my fears." The letter explained that if she had been found, she would have been taken into emergency protective custody again, moved to a new location, given a new identity. But this time she had made arrangements for Jack to join her. "Call the number in the phone I've left you," the letter instructed. "Use the code you used to open this box. They will help you find me." Jack set the letter down, his hands shaking. Everything he thought he knew about his life, about his mother, had been built on secrets and half-truths. Yet underneath it all was the same love and protection she had always shown him. He picked up the old flip phone and turned it on. The battery still had power. Of course it did. His mother would have checked it regularly. There was only one number programmed into it. Jack's finger hovered over the call button. 3 days, she had said. Wait 3 days before looking for the letter. It had only been 2. Something crashed outside the cabin. Jack froze, his senses suddenly alert. He moved to the window, staying low, and peered out. A raccoon had knocked over an old bucket by the woodpile. Nothing more. But the momentary fear was enough to make up his mind. He couldn't wait another day. he needed to find his mother now. Jack pressed the call button on the phone. It rang 3 times before someone answered. Identification code? A gruff male voice demanded. Jack swallowed hard and recited the numbers from memory. 847219. A long pause followed. Then the voice softened slightly. We've been waiting for your call, son. Are you at the designated location? Yes, Jack replied. Uncle Pete's cabin. Stay there. Don't leave for any reason. We'll come to you. Keep the phone on. Wait, Jack said quickly before the man could hang up. My mother. Is she okay? Is she safe? Another pause. We're working on that. Be ready to move in 1 hour. The line went dead. Jack stared at the phone in his hand. Working on that. What did that mean? Was his mother alive? In danger? Already relocated? He looked around the cabin, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just Uncle Pete's hunting cabin. It was a safe house prepared long ago for exactly this situation. His mother hadn't just been paranoid. She had been realistic. Jack gathered the documents from the metal box and stuffed them into his backpack. He added the remaining food and water. Then he sat by the window watching the path that led to the cabin, clutching his mother's locket in one hand and the strange phone in the other. Whoever was coming for him, whatever happened next, one thing was certain: he would find his mother. And when he did, they would need a lot more than a short letter to explain the life they had been living for 15 years. Jack sat perfectly still by the cabin window, watching the path through the trees. 1 hour had passed since the phone call, then another. The afternoon sun began to sink, casting long shadows across the clearing. Still, no one came. The old flip phone remained silent in his hand. Jack checked it repeatedly to make sure it was still on, still working. He wondered if he should call the number again, but decided against it. The man had told him to wait, to be ready. So he waited, his backpack by his feet, his mother's letter folded carefully in his pocket. A soft rustling sound came from behind the cabin. Jack tensed, listening hard. Not an animal. Too deliberate. Too careful. Someone was approaching from the back, away from the main path. He moved silently to the rear window, staying low. Through the dusty glass, he caught a glimpse of movement among the trees. A figure dressed in dark clothes moving from tree to tree. Then another figure behind the first. Jack's heart pounded. Were these the people from the phone call? Or were they the same men who had come to his house, the ones his mother had feared? He retreated from the window and grabbed his backpack, quickly considering his options. The cabin had only 2 doors, front and back. If these were enemies, they would have both exits covered. The windows were small, but he could fit through them if needed. A sharp knock on the front door made him jump. Jack Miller? A woman's voice, called softly. Jack didn't answer. His mother had taught him to be cautious. Jack, we're here to help, the voice continued. Your mother sent us. The code is 8247219. The same code from the box and the phone call. Jack moved cautiously to the door but didn't open it. How do I know you're telling the truth? He asked. Smart. Boy, the woman said, approval in her voice. Check the locket your mother gave you. The back panel slides open. Jack touched the silver locket around his neck. He had never noticed anything unusual about it before. He turned it over in his fingers and found a tiny seam along one edge. When he pressed it, a hidden compartment opened. Inside was a small slip of paper with one word written on it. Karen. Are you Karen? Jack called through the door. Yes, the woman answered. I'm Detective Karen White from the Maple Creek Police Department. I've known your mother for years. She helped my sister once. Now I'm here to help you. Jack hesitated, then unlocked the door. A woman in her 40s stood on the porch, dressed in jeans and a dark jacket. Her short brown hair framed a face with kind eyes and a serious expression. Behind her, a tall man in similar clothing scanned the surrounding forest. We need to move quickly, Karen said. It's not safe here anymore. Where's my mother? Jack demanded, not moving from the doorway. Is she okay? Karen's expression softened. We're looking for her, Jack. That's why we need your help. May we come in, just for a minute? Jack stepped aside, allowing them to enter. The man stayed by the door watching the forest while Karen moved to the center of the cabin. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions," she said. "I'll answer what I can, but we don't have much time." "The men who came to our house," Jack began. "Who were they?" "They work for someone named Victor Crane," Karen explained. "He was one of the executives your mother's testimony helped to investigate 15 years ago. He avoided prison on a technicality and disappeared. Recently, he's been rebuilding his network." "How did they find us after all these years?" Karen sighed. "We think there was a leak in the witness protection program. Several protected witnesses have been compromised in the last few months. Your mother contacted me 3 weeks ago with concerns that someone was watching your house." Jack thought back to his mother's behavior when he came home for the weekend, the constant checking of locks, the nervous glances out windows. She had known they were coming. Where would they take her? Jack asked, his voice tight with worry. "That's what we need to figure out," Karen said. "I can't officially help you. My department has been instructed to treat this as a simple missing persons case. Nothing more." "Why?" "Because someone high up doesn't want the connection to Victor Crane investigated," Karen said grimly. "But your mother saved my sister's life when she was in the hospital. I owe her. We all do." The man by the door spoke for the first time. "We need to move. Now." Karen nodded. "Jack, we're taking you somewhere safe. Sam here has contacts who can help us find your mother." Jack hesitated. Could he trust them? But the alternative was staying alone in a cabin that might already be compromised. He had to find his mother, and he needed help. "Let's go," he said, grabbing his backpack. They left through the back door, moving quietly into the dense forest. Sam led the way, followed by Jack, with Karen bringing up the rear. They walked for nearly an hour, following no path that Jack could see, changing direction frequently. Finally, they reached a dirt road where an old blue pickup truck waited, partially hidden by bushes. Sam did a quick check of the area before motioning them forward. "Get in," he said, opening the passenger door. "Stay down until we're on the main road." Jack climbed into the middle seat, Karen beside him, while Sam took the driver's position. The truck started with a rumble and they began moving slowly down the dirt road. "I need to know everything," Jack said. "Everything about my mother. About Victor Crane, about why this is happening now after 15 years. Karen and Sam exchanged a look. "Your mother was more than just a witness," Karen explained. "Before she went into protection, she copied financial records that could link Crane and his associates to operations across the country. The evidence was considered too circumstantial to use in court back then, but she kept it as insurance." "She never told me any of this," Jack said. "She was protecting you," Sam said, his eyes on the road. "The less you knew, the safer you were." They turned onto a paved road, and Sam nodded at Jack to sit up. "But now they think I know something," Jack realized. "Yes," Karen confirmed. "They think you know where the evidence is hidden." Jack thought about his mother's letter, about all the camping trips and emergency drills, about the secret compartment in the locket, about the coded box under the floorboard. "Maybe I do," he said slowly. "Not directly, but my mother trained me. All those years she was teaching me how to find hidden things, how to follow clues. Maybe that's why she couldn't take me with her. She needed me to find something she hid." Sam nodded. "That would make sense. Your mother is smart. Very smart." They drove in silence for a while, the darkness growing deeper around them. Jack stared out the window, thinking hard about all the places his mother had taken him, all the games they had played. "Where are we going?" he finally asked. "A safe house outside of Pierce Junction," Karen said. "About 2 hours from here. We have friends there who can help us." Jack fingered the locket around his neck. "My mother made me memorize other things, besides that code. Places, landmarks. I always thought they were just in case I got lost hiking." "They probably weren't," Sam said. "Your mother was preparing you." As the truck rolled through the night, Jack made a decision. He would use everything his mother had taught him. He would follow whatever trail she had left, and he would find her no matter what. The safe house was a small farmhouse surrounded by open fields. They arrived well after midnight, the moon hanging low in the sky. Sam drove around the property twice before approaching, checking for any signs of trouble. Inside, they found a man with gray hair sitting at a kitchen table, a cup of coffee in his hands. He stood when they entered. "This is Frank," Karen said to Jack. "He used to work for the Witness Protection Program before he retired." Frank nodded at Jack. "Your mother is a remarkable woman, one of the bravest people I ever helped relocate." "Do you know where she is now?" Jack asked. Frank shook his head. "No, but I have contacts who are looking. For now, you need rest. There's a bedroom upstairs you can use." Jack wanted to argue, to push for answers, but exhaustion was catching up with him. He hadn't slept properly since fleeing his home. He nodded and followed Karen upstairs to a small bedroom with a twin bed and a desk. "Try to sleep," she said. "We'll talk more in the morning." Despite his tiredness, sleep came fitfully. Jack's dreams were filled with images of his mother, running through endless forests calling his name. He woke early, the sun barely rising, and went downstairs to find Frank, Sam, and Karen at the kitchen table, speaking in low voices. They stopped when they saw him. "Any news?" Jack asked. "Nothing definite," Frank said. "But we have some leads. Sit down, Jack. Have some breakfast. Then we need to talk." Jack sat and accepted a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. He wasn't hungry, but he knew he needed to keep his strength up. "We think your mother is being held somewhere in the city," Frank explained as Jack ate. "Our sources indicate Crane's people have a warehouse near the harbor. They might be keeping her there while they try to get information from her." Jack put down his fork. "We need to go there, now." "It's not that simple," Karen said. "The warehouse is heavily guarded, and we don't know for certain she's there. We need more information." Sam, who had been quiet, spoke up. "We need the evidence your mother hid. It's the only leverage we have." "Against Crane?" Jack nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that. All night, actually. My mother loved traditions. Birthday traditions, holiday traditions. Every year on my birthday, we would go to the same park and have a picnic under the same oak tree." "The one at Lakeside Park?" Karen asked. Jack looked at her in surprise. "Yes. How did you know?" "Your mother mentioned it once. Said it was your special place." Jack nodded. "We went there every year without fail, even in the rain, even when I was sick. She always brought a small shovel, claiming it was for the sandwiches, but she would use it to bury a small time capsule. A tradition, she called it." "A time capsule?" Sam leaned forward. "Each year, we would bury something small to mark the year, and she would always say the same thing. Someday all these little treasures will tell the story of your life." Jack looked at them, his eyes wide with realization. She wasn't just creating memories, she was creating a backup plan, a way to store information where only I would know to look for it. Frank nodded, understanding in his eyes. Each year she added to her insurance policy, bit by bit, smart woman. "We need to go to that tree," Jack said firmly. Karen shook her head. "It's too dangerous. Crane's men might be watching the park, all the places connected to your mother. Then, we'll need a distraction," Sam said. He looked at Frank. "Do you still have contacts in local law enforcement?" Frank nodded. "A few who can be trusted." They spent the next hour planning. Frank made calls to his contacts. Sam studied maps of Lakeside Park. Karen prepared supplies. Jack tried to remember exactly where under the oak tree they had buried each time capsule. By mid-morning, they were ready. Sam drove Jack and Karen to Lakeside Park in a different vehicle, a red sedan that Frank had provided. They parked at the far end of the park, away from the large oak tree that stood on a small hill overlooking the lake. "Frank's contacts will create a distraction on the other side of the park in 15 minutes, Sam explained. "That should draw away anyone who might be watching. You'll have a small window to get to the tree and find what we need." Jack nodded, his heart racing. "I know exactly where to dig." They waited in the car, watching the park through the windows. Families with children played on the swings. Couples walked hand in hand along the lake shore. Everything looked normal, peaceful. Yet Jack knew that somewhere in the city his mother was being held against her will. A police siren wailed in the distance, then another. Several police cars sped into the far entrance of the park, lights flashing. People began moving in that direction, curious about the commotion. "Now," Sam said. Jack and Karen exited the car and walked casually toward the oak tree, trying not to draw attention. They carried a picnic basket between them, looking like a mother and son out for a day in the park. Inside the basket was a small gardening trowel. They reached the tree and sat down on the grass beside it. Karen placed the basket between them and opened it, taking out a sandwich to maintain their cover. "Where exactly?" she asked quietly. Jack looked around, getting his bearings. "Every year we sat on this side of the tree facing the lake. My mother would always bury the time capsule on the opposite side where no one could see what she was doing." They moved to the other side of the large tree, using its trunk to shield them from view. Jack took the trowel and began to dig at a spot about 3 feet from the base of the tree. "The last capsule we buried was 3 years ago before I went to college," he explained as he dug. "We didn't come last year because I had finals." The trowel hit something solid after just a few inches of digging. Jack carefully cleared away more soil to reveal a small metal container, similar to the one he had found under the cabin floorboard. "This is it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Karen kept watch as Jack pulled the container from the ground and opened it. Inside was not the small memento he expected, but a tiny flash drive wrapped in waterproof material. "She hid it in plain sight," Jack said, a mix of awe and sadness in his voice. "All those years right under a tree where anyone could have looked." "But no one would know where to look except you," Karen said, "and no one would connect a birthday tradition to hidden evidence." They quickly filled in the hole and moved back to the front side of the tree. Jack slipped the flash drive into his pocket. "Let's go," Karen said. "Sam is waiting." They walked back toward the car, still trying to look casual despite the urgency they both felt. They were halfway there when Jack noticed a black SUV parked at the entrance to the park. The same type of SUV he had seen in his driveway the day his mother disappeared. "Karen," he said quietly. "Don't look now, but I think we have company." Karen continued walking, her expression unchanged. "Keep moving, almost to the car." They reached the red sedan, and Sam started the engine as soon as they got in. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Jack looked back to see 2 men in dark suits walking quickly toward the oak tree. "They know," Jack said. "Somehow they know about the tree." "But they're too late," Sam said, accelerating onto the main road. "We have what we need." Jack clutched the flash drive in his pocket. "What now?" "Now we see what your mother thought was worth hiding for 15 years, Karen said. "And then we use it to find her." As they drove away from the park, Jack couldn't help but think about all those birthday picnics. All those times his mother had insisted on their traditions. How she had woven her secret life into their happy moments, preparing for a day she hoped would never come. "Hang on, Mom," he whispered. "We're coming." Back at the farmhouse, they gathered around a laptop computer. Jack's hands shook slightly as he inserted the flash drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a password prompt appeared on the screen. "Another code," Jack said. He thought for a moment, then typed in the familiar sequence. 847219. The screen flashed, then filled with folders and files. Hundreds of them, all neatly organized and labeled by date. "Your mother was very thorough," Frank said, leaning closer to see the screen. Jack opened the most recent folder. Inside were financial records, photographs, and documents, all pointing to Victor Crane's continued criminal activities over the 15 years since his mother had first testified against him. "She kept collecting evidence," Karen said in amazement. "Even in hiding, she never stopped." "Look at this." Sam pointed to a document dated just 2 weeks earlier. It was a shipping manifest for a warehouse at the harbor, the same warehouse where they suspected Nancy was being held. "Crane is using that warehouse to move illegal goods," Frank said after reviewing the document. "Weapons, drugs, smuggled, art. Your mother found a pattern in the shipping schedules. And a list of people involved," Karen added, scrolling through another file. Including 3 police officers and a judge. No wonder the investigation was shut down. Jack wasn't listening. He had opened another folder, this one labeled with his name. Inside was a video file. He clicked on it, and his mother's face filled the screen. "Jack," she said, her eyes filled with love and worry. "If you're watching this, then you've figured out the clues I left. I always knew you would." Everyone fell silent as Nancy continued speaking. "I'm recording this message in case something goes wrong. By now you know who I really am and why we've been living the way we have. I'm sorry for all the secrets, but I was trying to protect you." She explained how she had been gathering evidence against Crane for years, working with a small group of trusted contacts. "The evidence on this drive is enough to put Crane away forever. But be careful. He has people everywhere. Trust only those whose names I've hidden in places only you would know to look." The video ended with Nancy looking directly into the camera. "I love you, Jack. More than anything in this world, stay safe and remember I'm always with you even when we're apart." The screen went dark. Jack sat in silence, tears in his eyes. After a moment, Sam spoke. "We need to get this evidence to people who can use it, people who aren't under Crane's influence." Frank nodded. "I have a contact at the FBI. Someone from outside this jurisdiction who can be trusted." "But what about my mother?" Jack asked, wiping his eyes. "We can't wait for the FBI to act. Crane might move her or worse." "He's right," Karen said. "We need to move now, while we know where she might be." They formed a plan quickly. Frank would take copies of the evidence to his FBI contact. Meanwhile, Sam, Karen, and Jack would go to the harbor warehouse to look for Nancy. Night had fallen. By the time they parked several blocks from the warehouse, the area was deserted. Most businesses closed for the day. Only the warehouse showed signs of activity with lights visible through its high windows and 2 guards at the main entrance. "There's a side entrance the workers use," Sam said, pointing to a small door on the east side of the building. "Less likely to be guarded." They moved quietly through the shadows, avoiding the pools of light cast by street lamps. When they reached the side door, Sam used a small tool to work on the lock while Karen and Jack kept watch. The door opened with a soft click. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a narrow hallway. The sound of voices came from somewhere, deeper in the building. "Stay behind me," Sam whispered, drawing a gun from under his jacket. They moved down the hallway past empty offices and storage rooms. The voices grew louder. Sam held up his hand, signaling them to stop. He peered around a corner, then pulled back quickly. "2 guards," he whispered, outside a door at the end of the hall. "Is my mother in there?" Jack asked. "I don't know, but they're guarding something important." Karen looked around and spotted a fire alarm on the wall. "I have an idea." She moved back down the hallway and pulled the alarm. Immediately, a loud ringing filled the building. Shouts of confusion echoed from various rooms. "Now," Sam said, rushing forward. The guards had left their post to investigate the alarm. Sam reached the door they had been guarding and tried the handle. It was locked. He gestured for Jack and Karen to stand back, then kicked the door hard near the lock. It burst open. Inside was a small office that had been converted into a makeshift cell. And there, sitting on a chair with her hands tied, was Nancy Miller. "Mom!" Jack rushed forward. Nancy's eyes widened in shock and relief. "Jack! How did you—" "No time to explain," Sam said, cutting the ropes that bound her. "We need to move now." Nancy stood shakily. Her face was pale and tired, but she seemed otherwise unharmed. She embraced Jack tightly. "You figured it out," she whispered. "The tree." Jack nodded against her shoulder. "I found the flash drive. We have the evidence." "Fire alarm," Karen reminded them. "People will be evacuating. We can blend in with the confusion." They moved back into the hallway. Workers were streaming toward the exits, too concerned with their own safety to notice 4 more people joining the flow. They made it outside and quickly separated from the crowd moving toward where they had parked. As they reached the car, shots rang out behind them. Jack turned to see 3 men running in their direction, guns drawn. "Get in," Sam shouted, pushing them toward the vehicle. They piled into the car. Sam started the engine and accelerated away from the warehouse. The men fired after them, one bullet shattering the rear window. "Stay down," Karen yelled, pulling her own gun and returning fire through the broken window. Sam drove wildly through the streets, taking random turns to shake their pursuers. After several minutes of this, he slowed down and checked the rearview mirror. "I think we lost them," he said. Nancy, who had been clutching Jack's hand, finally relaxed slightly. "The evidence," she said. "Did you get it all?" "Yes," Jack assured her. "Frank is taking it to the FBI right now." "Frank?" Nancy's face brightened. "He came out of retirement to help?" "He said you were worth it," Karen said, smiling. They drove to a new safe house, a small apartment in a neighboring town. Once inside, Nancy finally had a chance to really look at her son. "I'm so sorry, Jack," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "For all the secrets, for putting you in danger." Jack shook his head. "You protected me my whole life. You prepared me for this without me even knowing it. And when the time came, I was ready." Nancy smiled. "You were always smarter than I gave you credit for." "Not smarter," Jack corrected. "Just paying attention to all those lessons you taught me." Over the next few days, Frank's FBI contact moved quickly. Armed with Nancy's evidence, they arrested Victor Crane and many of his associates, including the corrupt police officers and judge. The story made national news, though Nancy and Jack's names were kept out of the reports for their safety. 2 weeks later, they sat in a new house in a new city with new identities once again. But this time there were no secrets between them. "What do we do now?" Jack asked as they unpacked their few belongings. Nancy looked at him, her eyes clear and untroubled for the first time in 15 years. "Now we live, Jack. Really live. No more looking over our shoulders, no more fear." She pulled him into a hug. "And no more secrets. I promise." Jack held on tight, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The nightmare was over. The running was done, and their real life, their true life, could finally begin.